Well, welcome everybody, and Windsor, yes, well, quite close, Cheltenham, and Adam's in Bournemouth. He just lives in Bournemouth, and he teaches in Bournemouth, and he does his research in Bournemouth. He doesn't actually know that.
Yeah, I don't.
Is that right?
I don't like to go much further than that these days.
So, yeah, Adam, welcome. It's so great to have you here. You were here in 2007, but not like this with Donald, right? Taking the diploma in cognitive behavioral hypnotherapy a long time.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. It was a really good. It was amazing. I was. I think. Don sort of turned me on to a lot of. A lot of things, for sure, and was very influential to me. Thanks to him, that all of my self-hypnosis seminars these days, I attach a surgical clamp to the back of my hand, because I watched him doing it, and I thought to myself, I want to start doing that.
Yeah, me too. I had to, when I took over the college, I spent like a week training myself to be able to do that because I couldn't do it to begin with. Now it's like, I think it's just aging now. I just think it's a bit of old leather here, and a clip it on is fine. But it's interesting. Well, pain control is a whole wonderful topic in its own right. So fantastic. Adam, you're with us this evening to tell us about the science of hypnosis, self-hypnosis, and just give us a quick background a little bit more, so people have got some context about where you're coming from there, and your interests. And
well, I've got I'm going to be sharing some of that within what I do.
Okay, great.
But self-hypnosis is where I began with it. I had some mental health challenges as a younger man, and a hypnotherapist helped me, and I learned self-hypnosis with him, and derived a huge amount of pleasure from attempting to use self-hypnosis in a wide number of ways within myself, and very much an experiment of one. I've done a lot of different things with my body, and with the kind of sports that I'm involved in, and so on. As a younger hypnotherapist, a very young hypnotherapist as well, some of the early machinations of some of my self-hypnosis training was, we used to run a tent at Glastonbury Festival called the Hypnosis tent, and prior to no one was allowed to come under the influence of anything, and we would play drum and bass music and teach self-hypnosis skills for people to go and get high, just using self-hypnosis. So we really used a huge amount of different things when it came to exploring self-hypnosis. Certainly very different to the lab-based self-hypnosis that we're doing at Bournemouth University currently.
Yeah, but that sounds really interesting, and all sorts of things. There's a guy published that book Hyperimperia or something, which is all about having these far out experiences with hypnosis, which fascinates me from part of my spiritual background as well. So fantastic, Adam. Well, you have the floor here. From what I understand, Adam's going to be presenting for about 75 minutes, I think, his presentation, and he prefer we hold questions to the end, but you can drop them in on the way through, and then as we get towards the end, we'll then go through and address the questions. And Adam knows I've got lots here sitting here, so if you don't have enough questions, don't worry. I've got plenty. He's sweating under the skin there.
It's okay if I just start sharing my screen.
Yeah, you've got the screen share. I'm going to turn off my video now, and you'll go. There we go.
Okay, so can you see? You can see my slides now, can you?
We can see your slides. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, great. So Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Of course, you want to know how everything I speak about this evening is going to be applicable to your work with clients, and that's always been my first concern, and certainly will be my primary concern this evening. Though at times it may not seem it, but we'll absolutely get to that, and I'll kind of highlight and emphasise particular points of that ilk. As I began to research, study, explore, and teach self-hypnosis, I really felt a need to apply it to my own life too, just as we were mentioning briefly earlier, and make it all really importable and readily available to use across a range of applications. And so, I used self-hypnosis when running. I used to run ultra marathons. I was a sub 3-hour marathon runner, and ran a series of 100-mile running events, to the point where I wrote a book entitled Hypnosis for Running, simply because I wanted to share my experiences and the applications that were available. I was absolutely amazed with the ability to reduce pain when engaged in active alert self-hypnosis, whilst running. When you've run 75 miles, the equivalent of virtually 3 marathons back to back, knowing that you still have to run another marathon, there was it was amazing to be able to lean in on applications of self-hypnosis, as well as reducing the perception of effort. These were things that I really couldn't get enough of, and really kind of got me interested in some of the key notions of self-deception that I will address and speak about later on. As I got a bit older, I didn't have children and a marriage to maintain and so on. And the amount of running I was doing just wasn't viable anymore. And I made a big sort of lifestyle change and decided to pursue weightlifting. And I went from being a relatively skinny runner to being a guy that can squat 225 kilos in my late 40s and deadlift 250 kilograms. Again, there's a huge amount of self-hypnosis and self-deception that's used within that, and it's been fascinating for me. So I think the reason I was keen just to impress this upon you, and by the way, making gormless faces whilst engaging in weightlifting is optional. But I think I wanted to make it plain that that the applicability, that there's a lot of theory that I'm going to be getting us deep into this evening, but the practical applications to both for myself and for my clients are of paramount importance. And so the theory will always be leading to something that's practical and applicable. So probably a good place for me to start this evening then is back in 2018, myself and my colleague at Bournemouth University, Dr. Ben Paris, published and reported a literature review and meta-analysis. It was the first and only one that's ever been conducted on self-hypnosis within clinical applications of self-hypnosis. Of 576 studies that have been compiled on the subject of self-hypnosis across a very, very wide range of topics, there were 22 studies that met our inclusion criteria, and that's the inclusion criteria of being randomized and controlled, and so on. And of those, I guess in contrast to hetero hypnosis, of course, self-hypnosis involves inducing oneself into hypnosis and then following a set of self-generated suggestions. And self-hypnosis differs from standard hypnosis or hetero hypnosis, of course, because it does not require the involvement of another person. That seems like a really basic point, but you would be amazed at how important a sentence that is. That it differs because it does not require the involvement of another person. And I'm going to labour that sentence a little bit later on, so and help you help you understand why I think that is so important to say such a seemingly basic sentence so early on. So some of the, within those 22 studies that were reviewed, 18 found hypnosis was an effective treatment, and 14 studies outperformed active controls. So when we talk about active controls, we're talking about conventional care rather than waiting lists, for example, which is considered a passive control. Of the 4 studies that did not find any effect compared with controls, self-hypnosis involved listening to recordings only. And I refer to them as hetero hypnosis recordings specifically. And of those 4 studies where an effect was not found, none of them taught any self-directed or self-regulated skills and had less than 3 practice sessions. So quite a lot, around half of these studies used audio recordings in some capacity, but 4 specifically used hetero hypnosis audio recordings only, and positioned this and posited this as being self-hypnosis. Whereas, and what we went on to what the literature went on to really identify was that the main ingredients that were common to the successful outcomes reported within our meta-analysis was A, that individuals were taught self-regulated and self-directed skills, and B, that they had an opportunity to practice self-hypnosis on more than 3 occasions. Now, there was a case that could be made for having a precursor of hetero-hypnosis and for self-hypnosis practice to be supplemented with audio recordings, but it's not as convincing as the previous 2 ingredients. But I want to make this point really clear right now. Exclusive use of audio recordings, and audio recordings being labelled self-hypnosis, appear to lead to negative outcomes as far as the literature review is concerned. So, the conclusions that we arrived at this kind of early stage of the research was that self-hypnosis is effective. The meta-analysis that we conducted, which is a kind of statistical analysis where you merge the stats of all the different studies, revealed a medium to large effect size. Randomized controlled trials for various medical needs have shown self-hypnosis to be at least as effective as other better perceived treatment tools such as relaxation and mindfulness. In one particular study, in fact, a study on back pain by Mark Jensen, but the lead researcher was a guy called Tan, the findings indicated that 2 sessions of self-hypnosis training may be as effective as 8 sessions of hetero-hypnosis for that particular application, which was for lower back pain. Results from other studies give us some cause to suggest that self-hypnosis can be successful when hetero-hypnosis is not. So I mentioned that there are a couple of studies that didn't show effects. One, in fact, was conducted and funded by our own NHS in 2015. It was an obstetrics study, and 2 studies conducted in Sweden by 2 different studies conducted by the same research group, Werner and colleagues, in 2013. And studies where the authors were unable to demonstrate an effect. And there was an absence of all of these common ingredients that I mentioned previously, where the effect was demonstrated, and that was teaching self-hypnosis as a self-regulated skill, rather than spoon-feeding them with audios and saying that was self-hypnosis. So we actually said what's the difference between hetero-hypnosis and a recorded version of hetero-hypnosis. one of the other things within the meta-analysis, there was an obstetrics study in the 1990s that taught self-directed hypnosis, used no audio recordings, and was successful within obstetrics. So it tended to show and imply that sometimes self-hypnosis can be successful when, you know, a kind of pseudo-hetero hypnosis in the form of audios is not. Of course, the portability of self-hypnosis is a thing of beauty for our clients. The self-directed nature of self-hypnosis, you know, broadens its applications. You know, it can be used in noisy conditions such as, you know, labor and birthing and surgical environments. But also the autonomy of the individual gets fostered, because, you know, we can all use self-hypnosis independently in a variety of circumstances and situations. And it's got the benefit of promoting self-efficacy. And this is something that's really important for our clients, and something that I'm going to speak about in a bit more detail later on. But there are also other reported benefits, such as self-esteem enhancement, validation of certain coping skills. So, you know, like I said, the evidence is generally positive regarding the efficacy of clinical self-hypnosis. And you know, there's no adverse side effects that have been reported in any of the studies that we reviewed. Self-hypnosis training offers, you know, a really cost-effective alternative to some forms of standard care. So these are some broad strokes, some initial findings from reviewing the literature. So I want us now just to kind of roll our sleeves up a little bit, get stuck into some detail, some theory, and then, you know, how that then informs our professional practice with our clients and so on. As I already mentioned, you know, the key factor that differentiates self from hetero hypnosis is the lack of the need for involvement of another person. So, you know, self-hypnosis therefore adds a level of flexibility, self-control to the hypnosis process. And there are important benefits, and you know, this provides a strong motivation for having a greater understanding of self-hypnosis. It's over 40 years since the 1981 special edition of the International Journal of Clinical and Experimental Hypnosis that was dedicated to self-hypnosis. And in that time, research, you know, theoretical efforts to understand self-hypnosis seem to have paused. And one of the kind of, you know, part of my remit with my own PhD has been very much to revitalize that. But one of the reasons that you know, some of the understanding seems to have paused, and some of the development seems to have been paused, it's because the line that divides self and hetero hypnosis is not very well defined. So you know, one of the challenges that we have is that there are so many varying methodologies employed within self-hypnosis studies that raise some really important questions when seeking to understand it, in particular with regards to the input of another person. So, you know, I was saying earlier, of course, you know, self-hypnosis is something that's self-regulated, self-directed, and happens in the absence of another. Yet so many self-hypnosis studies require input of another person. So, for example, hetero-hypnosis is often a precursor to self-hypnosis. I'm guessing that you know, some of you present this evening perhaps, you know, teach self-hypnosis as an adjunct to hetero-hypnosis, or even create it as a product of hetero-hypnosis. So, you know, you give suggestions in hetero-hypnosis to be able to re-access. And we could potentially dispute that that's truly self-regulated and truly self-directed if they're reaching in to a former memory of self-hypnosis rather than instigating it wholly themselves and uniquely. Most individuals engaging in self-hypnosis typically tend to draw upon former experiences of hypnosis and draw upon conceptions of hypnosis, such as those found in the media media, and so it's very difficult to separate the two and pull them apart. And some people have even suggested that it would be folly to attempt to do so. So several instantiations of self-hypnosis have included the input of a hypnotist, such as having a hypnotist present who offers hetero hypnosis precursor, or who offers verbal or written instructions to follow, or have the recorded words of a hypnotist play on an audio recording. And these kind of instantiations, they blur the distinction between the two types of hypnosis, especially given that the types of audio inductions that are labelled self-hypnosis by some authors are also used in studies labelled by authors as hetero hypnosis. So back in 2005, an executive committee of the American Psychological Association, the APA, they altered their definition of hypnosis to include self-hypnosis, which they described as the act of administering hypnotic procedures on one's own. And this definition, it seemed to suggest that self-hypnosis involves the influence of no other person. Now, they revised, the APA Division 30 revised their definition in 2014, and it was roundly criticised by many scholars. Certainly Stephen Lin and his colleagues suggested that it wasn't based on any apparent empirical foundations. But they defined hypnosis as a state of consciousness involving focused attention and reduced peripheral awareness, characterized by an enhanced capacity for response to suggestion. Now, that does allow for self-hypnosis procedures, though self-hypnosis is not specifically mentioned. And with these factors in mind, you've got to question whether dissociating self-hypnosis and heterohypnosis is first of all necessary and is possible, in fact. So despite this, some have argued that hetero and self-hypnosis are entirely separate entities and should be treated as such. And even though they correlate, the existence of one is not dependent on the other. And the study and use of self-hypnosis could have important benefits. And that's what I really want to highlight this evening. I'm going to provide a brief review of some history, some research, some theories of self-hypnosis, okay, with a view, and my view has always been to revitalize the investigation of self-hypnosis. So, in the 1990s, an author called Gravitz reported that potentially the first use of self-hypnosis was by Franz Mesmer as a method of self-magnetization for a blockage in the lower body. And there are other hypnosis historians that consider mesmerism a precursor of hypnosis that operates on similar principles, which is a big debate for another day. But really, Braid in the 1840s was the first investigator to systematically explore the phenomenon of self-hypnosis, and he used it to aid his own health issues. And his later work, Observations on Trance or Human Hibernation, naughty Braid using the word trance. I don't know if you're allowed to use the word trance if Mark allows you to use it, but I don't. I tend to take a taser to the balls on anyone who uses the word trance within my own college. Anyhow, Braid provides one of the earliest accounts of self-hypnosis, and he describes how he successfully used self-hypnosis to deal with the pain of a rheumatism attack by following all the protocols and instructions that he gave his hypnosis patients, basically. And Braid reported he went on to be free of his rheumatism for several years, and highlighted that a hypnotist wasn't necessary. Coué later supported Braid's approach by conducting numerous demonstrations of individuals experiencing hypnosis, displaying hypnotic phenomena without any direct involvement or intervention from another person. Now, Coué is seen by many as an influential figure in the development of self-hypnosis, despite his system never being referred to as self-hypnosis. My Hypnosis Geek badge is an ode to Coué. That's the reason it has a little bowler hat on. But rather, he taught a process of waking self-suggestion, auto-suggestion, which became, globally recognized self-help methodology. And Coué taught active imagination experiments to develop hypnotic phenomena, simply teaching his students to affirm suggestions to themselves while engaging in vivid mental imagery with a depth of meaning and belief and volition. And this provided some really profound and important foundations for how we employ self-hypnosis today. Slightly later, in 1941, Andrew Salter, the behaviorist, the pioneer of assertiveness and all kinds of other things, wrote a paper, 3 techniques of auto-hypnosis. Auto-hypnosis, we pretty much consider to be, it's a synonym for self-hypnosis. And these 3 techniques were post-hypnotic suggestion, whereby subjects underwent hetero-hypnosis to help access self-hypnosis thereafter. The second technique was auto-hypnosis by memorized instructions. And the third was fractional auto-hypnosis, in which self-hypnosis was actualized by building different component parts of the experience. Within the paper, Salter gives some scripted accounts of the training that he offered his subjects, and a lot of it involved, vivid imagination, and a lot of things that we're going to be speaking about later on today. Very similar look to some of the things that are used in the Carlton Skills Training Program that I'll make some reference to. So these are some solid foundations upon which self-hypnosis started to grow. The notion inherent within all of these approaches was that hypnotic experience can also be improved with practice and with self-regulation and self-direction. It makes a lot of sense for me to make some empirical comparisons of self and hetero hypnosis next, in terms of effectiveness and in terms of phenomenologically. So how you subjectively experience the phenomenon and the recorded effectiveness. But there's very little research that actually explores whether self-hypnosis differs from hetero-hypnosis, or especially not any that or much that explores how. The studies that have engaged in such comparisons have drawn varying conclusions. One of the earliest comparisons of the two, Berriman and Hilgard in the 1930s, examined the difference in the effectiveness of suggestion that was delivered on postural movements. And in the 1970s, Rouche compared hetero-hypnosis with self-hypnosis in the presence of a hypnotist, and basically changed the Stanford hypnotizability scale, Form C, script into a first person. So when the script would suggest, I am about to give you some instructions that will help you relax and gradually enter a state of hypnosis, the self-hypnosis group would read aloud to themselves, I am about to give myself some instructions that will help me relax and enter a state of hypnosis. So subjects were then given the same period of time as the hetero-hypnosis group. But both of these studies showed self-hypnosis to be as effective as hetero-hypnosis. That is, subjects achieved the same scores and achieved the same hypnotic phenomena. Now, the study also reported that when hetero-hypnosis was experienced on the first day, self-hypnosis skills were inhibited on the second day, Conversely, those who engaged in self-hypnosis first were better engaged in hetero-hypnosis on the second day. Now, in contrast to that notion, self and hetero-hypnosis are independent. And Rush concluded that self-hypnosis is actually the primary phenomenon, and hetero-hypnosis is, in effect, a form of guided self-hypnosis. So you know, I mean, today I give all of my clients self-hypnosis tuition and skills development prior to hetero-hypnosis for some of the reasons that I've mentioned here, and some that I'll go on to mention later on. So, you know, empirical comparisons have, you know, albeit rather sparse, have tended to say that the two are equally effective. But where it starts to become really interesting is when we look at the phenomenology. So Johnson confirmed some of Rush's findings in the 70s, finding that subjects that were, you know, were as capable of hypnotizing themselves as they were of being hypnotized by a hypnotist. Johnson and his colleague Waite went on to find that hetero-hypnosis evoked more feelings of unawareness, passivity, and loss of control in their subjects, whereas self-hypnosis evoked more feelings of activity, awareness, and being in control of one's feelings. Now, Erica Fromm wrote this book. I don't know if you guys are able to see it there. She wrote Self-Hypnosis, the Chicago Paradigm. My next book and my PhD findings, and as you probably saw the initial slide here, I kind of doffing my cap to this body of work by Erica Fromm, which is really comprehensive, by referring to self-hypnosis, the Bournemouth paradigm. Yeah, we're giving them a little bit of a nod there, but Erica Fromm showed that while studies indicated that both self-hypnosis and hetero-hypnosis individuals experienced a high level of absorption, as well as lessening their connection to reality, individuals seemed to experience more vivid imagery when using self-hypnosis. And then they kind of explained that away in terms of in terms of, you know, you being able to choose it yourself. Later, you know, Johnson went on to report that individuals stated that they're more cognitively active and self-controlling when using self-hypnosis, and that seems rather obvious. But you know, Rush also provided evidence showing that more visual imagery and what he referred to as idiosyncratic fantasies would arise in self-hypnosis than in hetero-hypnosis. Slightly more recently, in the late 80s, Hammond and colleagues compared hetero and self and tape-assisted self-hypnosis when tapes were still a thing, and basically found that the quality of hypnotic experience in terms of concentration, absorption, distractions from thoughts, perception of depth, perception of involuntariness, the higher ratings were given to hetero-hypnosis, and lower ratings were consistently given to self-initiated and self-directed. So, you know, this has been borne out in 2000s. Bibby and colleagues, you know, elicited hypnotic phenomena, and even though idiomotor, you know, arm levitation and hypnosis regression to fond memories were equally effective, the experiences were described as being different in terms of self-hypnosis involving more active thought, and hetero-hypnosis being more involuntary. And this is an important finding, and I realize it seems like a rather obvious thing to say, but you know, since the sense of, you know, involuntariness is a key phenomenological experience of hetero hypnosis according to some theories. I mean, if you take Weizenhofer's classic suggestion effect, for example, it says that really you can only call it a hypnotic suggestion if you've, if it felt like it happened on its own. And so here we are having exactly the same phenomena being created with self-hypnosis, but us feeling more actively involved and having less involuntariness. Overall, the studies that focus on phenomenology of self-hypnosis suggest that self-hypnosis is qualitatively different. It's distinct from hetero-hypnosis, and it's certainly experienced as being less involuntary, but it's no less effective than hetero-hypnosis in terms of passing suggestions. And this is important. So if involuntariness is a key characteristic of hypnotic experiences that many theories set out to explain, and yet self-hypnosis is equally effective but experienced as less voluntary, can involuntariness really be considered a key characteristic of hypnosis, or should it be? I'm not giving an answer, I'm opening up a question. And it kind of brings me nicely on to start covering. This was my quote, by the way. I was speaking faster than my fingers were pressing the slide buttons. If involuntariness is a key characteristic of hypnotic experiences and so on. So it leads us nicely on to examine key theoretical approaches to hypnosis and what the implications are for the role of the self. So Mark tells me that you are all familiar with the socio-cognitive approaches to self-hypnosis. By the way, I have to tell you this. I'm very fond of Mark. Mark and I have known each other for a long time. And earlier this week, like on Tuesday, he started WhatsApping me about stuff that I was supposed to include in my presentation. So next time, him and I are going to go out for lunch and seek to make big changes in the hypnosis world. But he is definitely getting a wedgie at some point during that lunch in response to this. In a preface to the theory of hypnotism, personality theorist White of Lemonade fame, he redefined hetero-hypnosis by stating hypnotic behavior was meaningful, goal-directed striving, and that its goal was to behave like a hypnotized person. And White took the perspective of hypnosis being a verb rather than a noun. It's a skill that the individual has rather than a passive state that just happens or occurs in mechanical fashion. It offers us an early example of some of the emerging socio-cognitive perspective of hypnosis, which really sits well with self-hypnosis. Sabin and co, they continued challenging the traditional concepts of hetero-hypnosis as a state, but by suggesting that responsiveness was actually a result of participants' knowledge of what was required in the hypnotic situation, what their role-related perceptions and expectations and imaginative skills were. And examine the kind of situational demand characteristics that guided the way the role is enacted. But importantly, they conceptualized hypnosis as believed in imaginings and argued that the participant has this notion of the hypnotizee's role, even before being hypnotized. So they act and feel as if they are being hypnotized. So Sabin used role enactment to highlight the sort of active nature of responding to hypnotic suggestions. and highlighted the potential usefulness of having this education about the role of the hypnotizee. And it's something that we do at Bournemouth University. We give an educational video prior to teaching the self-hypnosis skills. So this adoption of the role of self-hypnotist, and role taking implies an act of the self. Barber was a prolific researcher, 60s, 70s in particular, and that hypnosis was much more the result of an ordinary psychological factors, such as framing a situation as hypnosis, such as our attitudes, imagination, motivation, expectation, all things that we are, that imply self-motivation and self-direction. Now, I'm going to mention Spanos in a bit more depth later on, because he elaborated on the notion of strategic role enactment. So rather than experiencing special states of dissociation, the hypnotic subject actively transforms feelings and thoughts and behavior and to be in line with their notion of the hypnotic role. And so being hypnotized was a self-constructed role, shaped after social models and expectancies. And I mention, Kirsch and Lin and their response set theory. They concluded that hypnotic reactions were different to willed, attention-controlled reactions only in perception. So hypnotic subjects would usually attribute their actions to their own will. During hypnosis, control is then attributed to an external source, such as the hypnotist. Kirsch and Lin's response set theory made the claim that all actions, whether they're hypnotic or otherwise, are at the moment of activation triggered automatically. So it's not the experienced automaticity of an ideomotor response that's an illusion, but rather the experience of volition that's claimed to characterize everyday behavior. So research suggests that actions are routinely initiated and pursued even when people are unaware of the goals to be attained. And Kirsch and Lin were basically saying, that although so much human behavior is initiated outside of awareness and occurs with little or no conscious deliberation, the response set theory that people adopt during hypnosis, and these people are shaped and primed by suggestions and response sets that operate outside of people's awareness but still motivate and guide their behavior. And they said that actually response expectancies don't produce a response set. Rather, they are one type of response set. Intention is another, and we'll come on to talk about that in a moment. But these bring about automatic responses in the form of self-fulfilling prophecies. Again, indicating a role for the self in producing hypnotic responses. So DCT, dissociated control theory, was kind of born out of, or the modern versions of it were born out of a very famous Norman and Chalice model of the SAS, the supervisory attentional system, that proposed that hypnosis disrupts the frontal lobe that mediates the attentional system and leaves the participant under the guidance of a contention scheduler, the automatic controller of the behavior, which is controlled by an external cue, such as the hypnotist. So basically, you inhibit, your frontal lobes are inhibited, and you hand over control to another individual. And the primary role of this supervisory attentional system is to represent and maintain representations of goals, so to ensure that the behavior coincides with these goals. Now, this would effectively leave the hypnotized person unable to control their behavior, and this would render self-hypnosis impossible. So as such, self-hypnosis would need to be considered a separate entity if dissociation is to be believed, and it would require completely separate explanatory mechanisms. So Irving Kirsch and Stephen Lin criticized this dissociated control theory of Woody and Bowers for placing so much emphasis upon the loss of control during hypnosis, explaining that such a lack of control could not explain self-hypnosis. Now, there have been some more recent modifications of dissociated control, whereby some level of self-guided control is still deemed possible during hypnosis and could allow for self-hypnosis, but it remains possible that self-hypnosis, according to their theory, is using a different set of control mechanisms altogether. I want to mention cold control theory here. It is just that, a theory, and it explains hypnosis in terms of individuals disabling their awareness of the intention to act, yet still act. Okay, so that they're disabling their awareness of intending to act whilst acting, whilst doing that thing. And it's a kind of strategic disabling of their intention that suggests that the individuals control their awareness of the intention to act, that, and it feels, so it feels that the act is occurring by itself. It feels as if it's happening on its own. And a key component of this theory is that it predicts that hypnosis does not confer any special abilities such that one cannot achieve anything whilst hypnotized, or suggestion that cannot be achieved outside of hypnosis or the influence of a suggestion. This was built out of and built from Rosenthal's higher order thoughts theory, where we're conscious of mental states by having thoughts about those states. And a thought about being in a mental state is a second order thought, because it's a mental state about a mental state. I am aware that the cat I am seeing is black. So a bit like, if you've ever looked at ACT, for example, or ever looked at the observing self types of notions, therapeutically, very similar. Third order thoughts are also possible by becoming aware of having a second order thought. I am aware of my awareness that the cat I am seeing is black. And this strategic control of our higher order thoughts following a hypnotic induction would apply whether the hypnosis was directed by another person or by the self. And so, under this, according to this theory, it's achieved by the self and not another. So the role of self is really pertinent and really relevant. I'm going to make a very small reference to another very popular academic model that I'm guessing slightly less of you will be aware of, or even inclined to become aware of. Academically, we've had to pay a lot of attention to it because the peer review process, this is quite a prominent theory at the moment amongst academics. And it proposed what's referred to as a predictive coding models of alterations in people's agency. Now, I'm not going to go into any depth on this, because basically Mark WhatsApped me and told me that perhaps I might destroy your will to live by going into this too much. And the amount of time I've got, you probably won't have the inclination either. And it's not clinically useful to go into this model in great detail, but I've had to cover it. If you want more on it, you can contact me. But it's got some interesting illustrations, because in order to sort of elucidate their theory, they draw on the sense of agency disturbances in schizophrenia, which is fascinating. In particular, delusions of alien control in schizophrenia, whereby the bodily movements are interpreted as being under the control of somebody else. But like I said, I'm not going to go into big detail on that today. So, you know, I'll summarize, and then I'll take some questions. Mark mentioned to me earlier that perhaps I could take some questions in the middle, and then I'll start getting onto the more practical stuff. But you know, in summary, we can see that many similarities and differences exist in the ways that hetero hypnosis and self-hypnosis are conceptualized, with most theories equating the two. Now, many, if not all, theories of hetero-hypnosis have proposed an important role for the self in producing hypnotic responses and contributing to the experience of hypnosis. And dissociation theorists, you know, historically supported the view that responses to heterohypnotic suggestions bypassed executive control mechanisms, you know, so they were occurring non-volitionally. However, later versions of this theory kind of loosened the dissociation, perhaps permitting a role for the self. But others have argued that the experience of involuntary responding is illusory, you know, and whether due to role playing, whether that's strategic role playing or not, or the willful disabling of the awareness of intentions, you know, insinuating the self back into the process. So if self-hypnosis is self-directed, is self-regulated, and involves self-suggestion, perhaps requiring more volition and intention than many theories of heterohypnosis allow, theories of heterohypnosis might need to be further adapted to account for self-hypnosis. And this might be useful in theory building. So there's a whole bunch of theory there as far as how we position self-hypnosis, and I'll start using that theory now to inform our practical applications in the second half of what I'll be talking about. So are there any should I stop sharing my screen for a moment and just have a quick look? Were there any really pressing questions, Mark?
There's a question here from Claire here. In 2018 study, were the hypno audio recordings personalized or generic?
Yeah, they were standardized. Had to be. Yeah, they were standardized, scripted, and then just delivered. Yeah, as a recording. So that there was no tailoring whatsoever.
Because I mean, and what strikes me and kind of coming off from that was, which I kind of making some notes, kind of Vygotsky and the whole social development of language being between two people, and then the individual becoming self-directed with self-instruction and self-taught, the child. But how that then, this aspect of self-hypnosis and how that then works with the therapeutic relationship, because we know that the most important factor possibly in psychotherapy is the working alliance of therapeutic relationship. And there are certainly, for more complex presentations, one might even look at hypnosis as a way to strengthen the therapeutic relationship, as Rogers would look at, yeah. But the self-hypnosis part would seem to peel that away and kind of to some extent sort of not so much strengthen the therapeutic relationship.
Au contraire. You see, I think part of our role as a hypnotherapist is not just to do hypnosis, but to train and to sort of coach people to be responsive hypnotic subjects, and that can be just as intimate a process as a hetero hypnosis engagement, especially because, you know, hetero hypnosis sometimes can be a little bit, you know, one way one-way traffic. It has the potential to be, certainly with the way in which hypnotherapy is taught by some places, I think teaching someone and showing them, I don't want to preempt some of the stuff I'm going to say, but what self-hypnosis, what you get to do as well is raise self-efficacy. And when someone feels their self-efficacy being raised, the collaborative nature and your relationship, your working alliance raises in sync with it.
I totally agree, and this is in line with what very much what we teach. And I'm also thinking many of these studies are around fairly simple, kind of monodimensional, 1 or 2 dimensional issues, rather than a much more complex psychiatric presentation where the whole working alliance is much more, and self-efficacy is part of a lot of stuff that's
absolutely. One of the challenges that we have in ever attempting to be scientific in psychology is that you have to isolate variables and you have to subtract a lot of the extra therapeutic factors that contribute greatly to therapeutic effect. So say for example, we have a study that shows smoking cessation is as 30%, for example, with this standardized treatment. If you were then to take that 30% efficacy smoking cessation standardized protocol and add to it working alliance, add to it expectation, add to it the fact that someone's paying, add to it the fact that you're a good human being who gives a shit about them, and a wide range of different things, we ought to be able to raise that 30% to something much more impressive and much more effective in the clinical environment. So you're quite right, it's a really, really important line of inquiry. So we don't be an absolute slave, we don't become science fascists. Instead, we let that stuff inform our practice, enrich our practice, and then develop.
So I think an interesting line of research might be to look at the measuring the working alliance and using hetero versus teaching self-hypnosis in ways that are very client-centered and attuned with high levels of rapport between the client and therapist. That might be quite an interesting.
Absolutely. I just want to. I just saw something just fly up here by Deborah. When you talk about self-hypnosis, do you mean just the bit where you put yourself into hypnosis? Yeah, absolutely. Like teaching the client to do the stuff that you usually do. And basically rendering yourself not necessary as far as induction of hypnosis is concerned. There's a wide range of things that are exponentially better done hetero hypnosis. Of course there are, but the adjunctive capacity of self-hypnosis is not so much about what you do there in the session, but the fact that they take it into their life, that they go and practice. So if you've done systematic desensitization with your client and they understand that process, then being able to, instead of spoon feeding them with an audio, equipping them with a self-efficacy enhancing process to practice for themselves away from here is really, the adjunctive capacity is where it becomes potent, where it becomes really, and also that it becomes a skill that can be generalized into many other areas of life for them, which is, what a beautiful thing to do for another human being. It makes I think it's a very cool skill set, and a wonderful part of what we do.
You think, kind of porting on from that, and also another idea here is looking moment by moment. We tend to sometimes absorb, imaginal absorptions occurring as if it's occurring, or expectations at a fixed level for the whole 10 minutes of hypnosis. But what we really know is actually things are varying a lot moment by moment by moment. And so that idea maybe that even a given session, there's hetero and self-hypnosis, and moment by moment the person is being more passive and responding, and then they're more actively engaging, and it switches.
one of the issues, I mean, I have to say to people, don't go doing self-hypnosis in bed. Don't go doing self-hypnosis in bed unless you're using it to go to sleep, because it's hard. Sometimes it can be effortful to maintain your attention and to fix your attention in with something, and requires some practice. The irony being that things, active alert applications of self-hypnosis are a work of art, because you get to use the working movements. For me, it was footsteps when running become your ongoing deepener. You're deepening your absorption mechanism. The lifting of the weight, the strain. It's very, very focusing. It sharpens the senses greatly, rather than gay abandon lying in bed. Your mind can easily wander. You need to, with hetero hypnosis, you've got someone that's able to give you a metaphoric kick in the shins, and waft the smelling salts under your nostrils, in order that you can kind of sharpen where you're at and start managing things with the individual.
And I'm reminded from some of this research of, like, Meekenbaum's research on what was going on in systematic desensitization. While Wolper thought people were just passively being conditioned, he found they were actually talking to themselves a lot and saying, I can do this, I can cope with this, I can handle it. So
their cognitive strategies were really prevalent. So same as with the classic marshmallow test. The kind of cognitive strategies and beliefs that the kids were engaging themselves with to resist the marshmallow was where all the interesting stuff was at.
Yeah. So how we inquire on that, so interesting. Let's have a look at a few of these other questions here.
So I just want to reply to Claire Taylor here. Is there research that indicates how to best teach self-hypnosis? Yes, there is. And our research informed protocol is something that I will share with you shortly.
Fantastic.
The Headspace app. I think the Headspace app is it's probably not relevant to some of the it's probably not consistent with some of the research findings with regards to self-hypnosis. It's kind of more less goal focused, but you're quite right. Building up in degrees of challenge can be done in terms of building up in terms of hypnotic skills. So developing skills in terms of idiomotor responses, then idiosensory responses, and really being able to convince yourself of some of the stuff that you can do, and then apply it over your life throughout your life. Okay. Yeah. So with regards to Sue Sawyer, your question there. So for me, teaching self-hypnosis isn't something, prior to hetero hypnosis. It's something whereby, I have videos, protocols, a PDF format that we use within our research that I give to all of my clients prior to them coming for their first session of hetero hypnosis with me. So, they're being educated in it. They're going to practice some skills prior to coming and seeing me for the first session, and start, sometimes it might feel a little bit trial and error and haphazard, but start to familiarize themselves with it. And that enriches the hetero hypnosis experience. So you said, can you explain how this would work with pain, where we demonstrate that pain signals can be modified? With that, can you explain how this would work, where we demonstrate that pain signals can be modified, and the techniques of how to do this then work with self-hypnosis? I think then, the self-hypnosis then becomes adjunctive in addition to what you do when you meet them. So that is, if somebody's got an understanding of and has practiced or had a go at some self-hypnosis skills, typically it tends to enrich their hetero hypnosis. So it's good good for them to practice some self-hypnosis techniques before their first session proper with you, in order that when you then, do your pain relief or pain application, whatever it may be, will be enriched as a result. So all hypnosis isn't quite self-hypnosis. Well, this is the $1 million question, Simon. It might even be, or all hypnosis is, or all self-hypnosis isn't quite hypnosis. Because real chicken and egg. Quite clearly, all hypnosis exists within the self. And the self influences, it cannot not influence it. I oscillate on a daily basis with regards to how much I believe that all hypnosis is self-hypnosis and not. I'm not fully committed to either side at the moment, but I am going to look at that statement shortly.
Good, and we have got some centrality around the concept of self here, which, if you're a Buddhist, is going to cause some concern, because of course we wouldn't think there is one.
Yeah, yeah.
There's just the flow of
we can't be attached
so
to that.
How do you direct the flow of phenomena? This is interesting. Very good. So,
is it okay if I could?
Yeah, let's. One other thing was, because you were just mentioning it there, I was thinking this idea, which I know you're aware of, that idea of problem solving, and so the idea that client is problem solving, and that in self-hypnosis they're actually getting more time to problem solve in a way, and if they build up that little problem solving ability of how to get the suggestion to work, then when they do the hetero hypnosis, they can be doing that quite rapid problem solving of getting the suggestion. I don't know, would you comment on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, Erica Fromm cited many of her self-hypnosis participants as creating problem-solving strategies inherently and innately as part of their self-hypnosis approach. And I'm going to speak about some very prolific researchers, Cohen and Olness, who in the 70s and 80s were prolific with pediatric applications of hypnosis. And kids would problem solve. Kids would absolutely problem solve within within some of the within the self-hypnosis format. It's a very relevant, very good point that you make. It's a very rich and fertile environment, self-hypnosis. I mean, essentially it's problem solving in hypnosis form, I guess, at one end of the spectrum.
Well, and we can come back around to the predictive coding idea. We should dive into that. It is worthwhile, and I think the idea that in hypnosis we are less constrained in our imagination than we normally are in our predictive way of seeing the world, and that can also is paralleled in dreams, and also when we take psychedelics. I've had some chats with Lisa Feldman Barrett on this issue. So I think this is a very interesting idea, because it would actually give us somewhat of a rationale for some elements of relaxation back in there, because we're being less constrained by, for example, neuromuscular input, if we relax the body, and therefore the imagination can roam more free, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. It's funny because we're going to be in my research, we're actually comparing self-hypnosis with imagination skills. We're using it because Zoltan of cold control theory fame believes that the word blindness suggestions in Stroop are made effective because of imagination. So we're purposely attempting to prove him wrong by using imagination as the control group, and really highlighting imagination and comparing it with self-hypnosis skills, which I'll come on to speaking about in a short while.
I'm really interested in how you differentiate between the two in it, because clearly Feldman Barrett doesn't see. She sees imagination as the way in which we free ourselves from our
Well, yeah. I mean, self-deception and automaticity. So, sense of agency is the main difference within the two protocols.
Oh, I see.
So, imagination is, just engage, make things as vivid as you can, and the self-hypnosis that we're teaching is, rather than imagine the things, imagine a pen being stuck to your hand. We're saying, that the pen is automatically stuck to your hand and feeling as if it's happening all by itself. And I'll make those distinctions later on.
Fantastic. Okay, very good. Okay, so let's go back to your presentation, sir, and we'll come back to the rest of these questions towards the end there.
Yeah. So to start considering the practicalities and how this is useful for you, and for your clients, there has been considerably less research conducted on self-hypnosis compared to hetero-hypnosis. But I mean, self-hypnosis has been shown to be effective in a wide range of clinical applications. Immune functioning, reducing the need for medication in childbirth, reducing stress, anxiety, hypertension. The most widely researched application of hypnosis is in pain reduction. Anyhow, within the literature, I mentioned, and I'm going to keep mentioning it, that the obvious benefit to self-hypnosis is the lack of the need for the presence of another person. So once taught and once underway, it can be imported into one's life. And if hetero and self-hypnosis are so similar, it clearly benefits the patient that they can continue treatment without, and they can begin to develop self-efficacy. And there's evidence that self-hypnosis results in a sense of self-efficacy or self-confidence. Within the literature on this topic, self-confidence is regularly attributed to positive therapeutic and performance outcomes. The classic concept of self-confidence advancing performance was redefined by Albert Bandura, as self-efficacy. And this is our judgment of our own ability to successfully perform a behavior. And self-efficacy theory asserts that for individuals with the correct incentives, the correct skills, the correct training, actual performance will be predicted by their belief in their personal competence. So therefore, if an individual has the perception that they can successfully change in some way, that belief increases the likelihood that the change will successfully occur. So, judgments about our own self-efficacy have been shown to predict levels of success, and they support this theory. Now, according to self-efficacy theory, efficacy expectations, they don't just predict performance, but they predict how much energy we expend and our persistence to complete an activity. So support for the development of self-efficacy as a byproduct of self-hypnosis is born in a number of studies, a lot of literature, but in particular, literature that's exploring pediatric applications of self-hypnosis. So in the 1970s, Olness did a brilliant study, noted that not only did bedwetting cease, but children developed new confidence from having achieved the cure on their own. So this pediatric application, dealing with childhood neuroses, using self-hypnosis to overcome bedwetting, there were other benefits, byproducts that got generalized into other areas of life, which is just a wonderful thing. Many studies of pediatric applications of self-hypnosis have successfully demonstrated an effect, when children were equipped with this self-regulatory skill. So as self-efficacy then develops, so do other areas of self-directed skills, that have been developed by practicing self-hypnosis. So Erica Fromm and her colleagues in the 1980s described how their subjects experienced self-hypnosis as an opportunity for creative self-exploration, and also stated that many of the subjects considered that self-hypnosis sessions were a problem-solving activity that they actively and constructively engaged in. From the reason I mention Erica Fromm so much is because, this was like a 20-year ongoing project, a really impressive body of work. But she also found that attentional skills, problem-solving skills, creativity all developed with the use of self-hypnosis. So overall, the benefits of self-hypnosis might extend beyond the direct applications that are primarily explored within some of these studies, but in particular with regards to the advancement of self-efficacy. Now, so Gurasini and Spanos developed, a method of training subjects to be better hypnotic subjects. I'm certain that Mark's training includes this, and so you'll all be familiar with the Carlton Skills Training Program. But for those of you less aware or not aware, it aims to show that hypnotizability can be substantially modified. So many people that were initially measured as being low on a scale of hypnotic responsiveness showed an increase by the end of the program. So the cognitive, the CSTP and the Carlton Skills Training Program, it has 4 parts. One of which is to regularly practice the hypnotic strategies in a self-directed fashion. And that's probably where more time is spent than any of the other parts. The inherent thought is that self-hypnosis is possible, and practicing it helps enhance hypnotizability and responsiveness. It's possible, however, that the enhancement in hypnotizability results from a wide range of different things. But since its initial hour-long format was proposed, there's been a 10-minute version and a 4-minute version of the Carlton Skills Training Program that have been used with no loss of effectiveness. So, in contrast to hetero hypnosis, self-hypnosis promotes the notion that hypnosis is a skill to be practiced. It encourages patients and participants to engage in hypnosis outside of the clinic. It permits skill development. But importantly, your clients get more responsive as a result of practicing self-hypnosis. So, everything that you do with them, teaching them how to then take that into and import that into their lives and practice those skills, it means that when they return for subsequent sessions within your treatment plan, they'll be more responsive, more receptive. They'll be better hypnotic subjects, and this is a tonic for what we do within the therapeutic environment. It's advancing much of what we do. Now, mindful meditation has achieved a real level of credibility and popularity and acceptance by the public and by professional communities that the field of hypnosis hasn't ever really. Michael Yapko suggested that it's, the image of hypnosis is created by TV and film. I would say, and this is going to make me, it makes me very unpopular, and I'm worried I'm going to get lynched one day. But the quality of training in hypnosis and hypnotherapy in most Western countries is so dire, so abjectly poor that so many myths and misconceptions are just promoted by hypnotherapy training. Nonetheless, mindfulness has been popularized as an individual process. It's associated with spirituality, with religion, and in some corners, but it's become popular as an individual process that people can do for themselves, by themselves. So self-hypnosis, with its emphasis on independent, self-directed, the nature of hypnosis, it could represent a pathway to far greater general acceptance as a form of treatment in general. So for me, popularizing, revitalizing research in the field of self-hypnosis, having more clinicians teaching their clients self-hypnosis, is an opportunity for all of us to potentially create more general acceptance with regards to hypnosis and hypnotherapy in general terms, because it's no longer giving the impression of someone else doing something to you. Many of my clients often want to know the difference between self-hypnosis and meditation. Meditative techniques tend to emphasize mindfulness and concentration, which shares some parallels in the way in which hypnosis can be conceptualized. Self-hypnosis has been directly compared in efficacy to a meditation or relaxation technique for anxiety, the Benson type of process I'm sure you'll all be aware of. Both forms of treatment were shown to be effective, and no real differences in therapeutic effectiveness or efficacy were observed. Now, in the early 2000s, a researcher called Holroyd drew some parallels between meditation and hypnosis, noting that when suggestions for self-enhancing experiences are given during mindful meditation, it's indistinguishable from hypnosis, both neuroscientifically and phenomenologically. But he also noted that both meditators and self-hypnotists experience changes in imagery vividness. He highlighted phenomenological similarities between meditation and self-hypnosis, and studies, noted that they were both associated with alterations in self-awareness, sense of time, perception. But there are potentially some fundamental differences between the two techniques. The underlying philosophy of mindfulness often aims to dissuade the meditators from being goal-focused. In contrast, self-hypnosis is overtly a goal-oriented process. Now, Stephen Lin, funnily enough, Mark and I have discussed a paper that Stephen Lin and Devon Terhune and Green published in 2020 and suggested that hypnosis would be much more widely accepted if more accurate information was disseminated. But of particular relevance to the education of hypnosis is this commonly held myth that hypnosis is a trance state induced by a hypnotist. And Lilienfeld and colleagues, wrote something similar. And in this sense, the person being hypnotized has no control. And Green, who's done lots of research on public perception of hypnosis in the early 2000s, found that 49% of the people that they surveyed were wary of being hypnotized due to the belief that they were going to be relinquishing their free will to the hypnotist. And 79% of their participants believed that success of the hypnosis was dependent upon the skill of the hypnotist. So the notion of a form of treatment that's effectively self-control and developed as an independent skill, that's helped launch mindful meditation to the forefront of the research agenda, for example. Hypnosis could therefore benefit from a greater focus on the self in the process. And I can never understand why more people can't see that within our field, and more people don't have the same appetite to go and understand self-hypnosis, in that regard. Now, most evidence and theories indicate, that self and hetero hypnosis are much of a muchness phenomenon. That a lot of people argue it's the same phenomenon, and I've argued that there are benefits to putting the self back into hypnosis. I just want to mention, I want to mention that the studies that we're conducting here at Bournemouth University. On this slide, this first slide, these are our research booths in the psychology department, the labs. This is one of our master's research assistants, and this is us in the where you have to have your head held still. Basically, this here is a pupillometer, and this is the software that I have on my laptop, while the participants are looking at the screen. And what this does is it measures the size of their pupils. While they're engaging in the Stroop task. Now, I'm pretty sure you're aware of the classic Stroop task. This is where subjects are asked to name the ink colour of a coloured word. And it was identified by Mr. Stroop in 1935. And so when subjects respond to the ink colour of an incongruent word, so that is when the word red is displayed in green ink, the subjects usually are much slower and they're less accurate than when they're identifying the ink colour of a control item, like the word flower in green, or even the word green in green. You know, you very easily say. So this is what's referred to as the Stroop interference effect. That's slowing down because you're reading a colour of a word and then attempting to think of and identify a different word. That's Stroop interference. And it's one of the most thoroughly studied phenomena in attentional research. So reading is considered to be automatic in the sense that it's obligatory. And a reader, therefore, is unable to withhold accessing a word's meaning, even when given explicit instructions to only focus on the ink colour. So studies have shown that the Stroop effect can be substantially reduced following a post-hypnotic suggestion for word blindness. So it was suggested to the participants that they'd perceive the words as if they're meaningless and from a foreign language. And this was by Amir Raz, and it's been replicated numerous times in numerous different ways. And a post-hypnotic suggestion for word blindness can be given whilst hypnotized, and it remains effective while they're completing the Stroop task afterwards. Now, my PhD supervisor and friend and colleague, Ben Paris, about 10 years ago, showed that maintaining activation of this suggestion is potentially effortful. It's resource consuming. So therefore, we're building upon that currently and training participants to advance engagement with the hypnotic process could lead to improved performance. So we aimed to determine whether it would be possible to further counteract the pervasiveness of word reading by advancing engagement in hypnosis by teaching some of our participants our research-informed self-hypnosis training program that was given to the experimental group, and seeing how that affected their ability on the Stroop task. What we also did is to measure the size of their pupils. You can't consciously control the size of your pupils. Unless you were to show yourself horrible pictures of something and scare yourself. Even then, you'd still know that the scare was coming up. So it gives us an indicator of how much effort is being applied. And this can show us how involuntary, how effortful everything is being. So we've run 4 experiments with over 500 people now. Interestingly, our pilot study, I asked for people from my social networks, and got loads and loads of hypnosis professionals in it who were just, you know, terrible hypnotic subjects. And thankfully it was the pilot. But the, you know, we showed that the Stroop interference was the same as with hetero hypnosis. But when doing it with self-hypnosis, they used more effort. We only work with medium hypnotizables. People that are highly hypnotizable will always respond well to the game anyway, so we won't be able to see a difference, and similarly low hypnotizable. So the Stroop response times were faster with self-hypnosis. Our SOARS ratings went up. SOARS, this is a sense of agency rating that's used in lots of hypnosis academic research. So people's sense of agency, you know, it felt less involuntary and less effortful when using self-hypnosis, but the scores were the same. You know, their response times were the same. The reduction in Stroop interference was the same. So despite the sense of agency not changing, you know, effort levels were notably higher. So we are in the process of proving the distinction, and so our process, our protocol, if you like, involves education of hypnosis, primarily a socio-cognitive perspective of hypnosis. So education of adopting a hypnotic mindset, engaging in eye fixation. You know, it's not 100% necessary. The hypnotic mindset is usually enough, but engaging in eye fixation as a way to corral the hypnotic mindset. Inducing hypnosis, doing a counting deepener where they're absorbing themselves within the process. And then practicing a range of different types of hypnotic phenomena, starting with sticking a pen to your hand. If any of you would like a roadmap, a free roadmap in a PDF format that's very similar to the process we use within our research, you can just Google Adam Eason Self-Hypnosis Roadmap and you can download it. I've got it available on a page on my college website. But so I mean, the process is as simple as that, and basically, we give them a reflective process as well. So each time they're to reflect on what they do. It's amazing how many people. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen just for one moment because I've still got a couple more slides to show you. But it's amazing this. How many, but when we're teaching people to have a pen stuck to their hand, how many people say to me, you know, yeah, but it's hard. It's hard, Adam, to imagine a pen being stuck to my hand. And I say to them, well, that's not the hypnotic mindset. You know, you're doing, you know, you're doing self-hypnosis to your detriment there by saying that and investing your belief in that practice. One of the things that we teach a great deal is automaticity, to explain that you know that you just believe this to be your reality. You just know it. You like Sabin and Coe's believed in imagining. You know, you're asking your client just to make it reality. I always use the example. I say to my clients, you know, if I let go of this pen right now, what do you suppose happens to it? And usually, you know, people are quite quick to say that it will fall to the floor. And you know, I'll say to them, you know, of course, you know, it's going to fall to the floor. You didn't think for a moment that it was going to fly up into the corner of this room. And that's the same mindset we want you to adopt to the hypnotic phenomena you're attempting to achieve. You know, you apply expectation. You apply expectation, you apply a sense of knowing, a believed in imagining, you adopt the role. and you know it to be your reality. And the more you practice that, the more you engage with your beliefs. And sometimes somebody might drop the pen, and I'll say, we'll reflect afterwards, and we'll say, well, what did you do? What happened inside your head? And some of them say, well, I knew it wasn't stuck. And I say, well, that's not the hypnotic mindset you've been taught, is it? Because you're tasked with knowing that it is stuck, even if for a minute moment. So we teach some self-deception. To take a sidestep with the weight lifting that I spoke about at the top end of this presentation this evening. One of the most potent cognitive strategies for weight reduction, for weightlifting, is to tell someone that there's 100 kilos on the bar when actually there's 110 kilos on the bar, and very often they lift it as if there was 100, and are amazed if you tell them afterwards that actually there was 110 on there. And this is a similar kind of deception, yet we're seeking to create it, to make believe in our own minds. And lots of people say, well, they kind of oscillate and have that self-deception for brief moments here and there, and that's absolutely fine, because you become more familiar with it. You start to know it. It starts to become easier to understand. Now, let me just. There's a couple more things I just want to mention, and then we'll. So the potential reduction in the experience of involuntariness in self-hypnosis without a kind of concurrent modification of its effectiveness, it's a challenge to theories of hypnosis that have involuntariness as a foundational experience, okay? Now, while there has been a substantial amount of research into the neural correlates of hetero hypnosis, there's only ever been one study, and it's a case study on neurophysiological mechanisms of self-hypnosis. That's a study by Burkle and colleagues in 2005. And that's the reason that this presentation, some of you may have been hoping for some neurophysiological information here, but there's a real lack of research on the neural correlates of self-hypnosis. And it's not known if self-hypnosis is neurophysiologically unique or if it is similar to hetero-hypnosis. As I mentioned, very early on this evening, given that the latest APA definition of hypnosis doesn't specifically mention self-hypnosis, even though it can account for it, perhaps now is the time for researchers to explore self-hypnosis in order to provide evidence to reconsider existing definitions so that they can account for self-hypnosis regardless of whether it's deemed to be a wholly separate entity or a component part of hetero-hypnosis. If evidence suggests that self-hypnosis involves a different sense of agency, involving more volition, then this needs to be taken into account. For example, the current evidence tends to suggest that self-hypnosis is clinically as effective as hetero-hypnosis, but it's potentially phenomenologically different. So, you want to let your clients know that, if they're expecting to have the same experiences at home using self-hypnosis to the ones that you are giving them in the therapeutic room, that's going to be a misleading expectation. It may lead them to think that they are failing. So make that clear, make that apparent. Phenomenologically, your experience with self-hypnosis will be different when you get home, and that's perfectly okay. That will give them encouragement to practice and to not make comparisons. Self-hypnosis potentially provides us with an opportunity to change the commonly held view that hypnosis involves giving up control to another. A perception that I think has likely caused a barrier for the uptake of hypnosis in clinical settings, that and poor quality training, despite strong evidence for the efficacy of hypnosis, The added potential benefits of self-hypnosis are, of course, for self-efficacy. Perceiving suggestibility as a skill to be developed, seem to provide strong motivation for the continued application and the study of self-hypnosis. Self-hypnosis, should be a self-induced, self-directed, self-regulated experience without the need for verbal direction from another person in any way, and that includes audios. I don't officially think that audios can be classed as self-hypnosis, but that there are academics out there who think that I shouldn't be saying that. It's a larger debate, and this involves using one's own cognitions and mental imagery to communicate with oneself in a goal-oriented way, with a positive, expectant attitude, with all the benefits and perceived self-efficacy that brings. So there's some more discussions. Those are the kind of things that I think will really need to be informing your clinical practice when you are teaching your clients self-hypnosis. I think Mark just gave a link, the self-hypnosis roadmap, or my 20-minute crash course video on my YouTube channel, my Science of Self-Hypnosis book. I'm going to be disseminating real detailed research findings at the UK Hypnosis Convention. The main reason I'll be doing that, a complete disclosure and transparency. I own the UK Hypnosis Convention and run it, so it makes sense for me to make a big play on that. And if you want to ask me anything outside of this webinar, you're very welcome. I'm very accessible. I'm very easy to find. It doesn't necessarily mean that you'll get a response from me that quickly. So I stopped sharing. I'll probably leave it there and then start asking. We can start dealing with some questions, shall we?
Yeah, that was just fabulous, fabulous, Adam. I'm so to see your focus on self-efficacy through all of this. I think it's really, really interesting and something we're very, very aligned. I hope everybody recognizes.
Could I just pick up? Could I just pick just when I had my slides off, I saw that comment just come in then. Where Tamsin had said that's dangerous, and I wanted to reply to that straight away. The notion of the notion of self-deception and deceiving ourselves on purpose may seem dangerous, but and it may also seem quite a challenging and difficult thing to do. Yet is happening automatically. If you look at the heart of a great many therapeutic issues that we're seeing our clients for. So say, for example, somebody comes and sees me because they've developed an irrational fear of dogs. They have a phobia of dogs. And they're walking through a park one day and they see somebody walking, a very friendly looking, lovely dog off in the horizon. Now, what starts to happen with this person, that their automatic response, they start to adopt the role of phobic. They begin to believe in what they are imagining, very often imagining dogs biting them or fearful things happening. They start to have a certain degree of expectancy. Basically, they're doing all the things that I've been talking to you about doing, but they've developed them naturally in a detrimental, negative fashion. And ultimately, what we're seeking to do is use those exact same parameters that exist and occur very naturally and corralling them on purpose to great effect. So I know that the term self-deception can sound dangerous, yeah, and has a sense of jeopardy to it. But we are doing the self-deception on purpose, and ultimately with some ethics, and ultimately with our own well-being in mind. So I hope I've attempted to assure you there that even though it can be Oh, dangerous for the weightlifting. Yeah. I should have asked you about the question before I went into it first of all, shouldn't I? Yeah, that'll serve me right. Okay.
And there's some studies by Platonov, of course, on that, which I'm sure you remember.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much to believe everything there in the Platonov book and how solid that is, but it's quite impressive.
Yeah, I mean, hour-long, full sensory deprived induction processes of fairly probably not quite as importable to the weightlifting environment as our self-hypnosis protocols.
But his ideas there on overcoming fatigue by basically telling the person it's 10 times lighter and then 10 times lighter. And the person's lifting the weight just, I mean, surely the muscle's getting damaged there, I would have think. But anyway, you must have been looked into that, I imagine.
Yeah. Instead of DOMS, you have OMS. Yeah, so instead of like delayed onset muscle soreness, when we're weightlifting, you often get delayed onset muscle soreness, which is DOMS, and we take great pride in having DOMS when we're weightlifting. But in his case, with the repeated, it's getting lighter, it's getting lighter, it's getting lighter, you would get OMS. You would just get immediate muscle soreness. Yeah.
Interesting. So let's come to some of the questions here. And I'm going to come on with some of mine.
Yeah, you select them. You select the ones.
Well, I'm just going to pull out the one here. Deborah says, you say that experience of self-hypnosis will be different to being hypnotized in session by a therapist. What about if the client self-hypnotizes in session with the therapist? Yeah, well,
absolutely. I think that and typically that's where the vast majority of self-hypnosis gets taught, in that context and within that framework. So you get the opportunity. You get the opportunity to that the client gets the opportunity to do some trial and error, to practice there, and so on. So it makes absolute sense. So some of the early research does tend to suggest that when it's good instruction, whether it's verbal or written, and the self-hypnosis happens before the hetero, it enriches the hetero hypnosis experience. However, some people's way of working doesn't permit that. The structure of sessions doesn't always permit that. So it doesn't have to be rigid. It can be fine. I think one of my challenges is that when hetero hypnosis occurs as a precursor, people typically tend to dip into that experience rather than really self-directing, self-regulating, and creating something that's of their own creation and unique, and also make unfavorable comparisons between their hetero hypnosis experience, where they haven't had to work very hard, they've just kind of been spoon-fed a lovely experience, and then find it quite defeating if they're not able to recreate that exactly, which is an unrealistic expectation.
But this aspect of using hetero and then returning it back to the client, I think is, Peter Warwell talked about that. They have to give us control, to trust to a certain extent, and then we tell them they're taking control.
Yeah, absolutely, and showing someone that you trust them enough for them to take the lead. Kevin McConkie, who I've he's an Australian self-hypnosis researcher since the 1980s. I've been consulting with him on some stuff that we're doing, and he's really big on this idea of and he says that the vast majority of people are taught self-hypnosis in a clinical environment, that experience it, and it's being created in a way in which I totally lost my thread there. What tell me what you just said.
Well, I'm trying to read the questions here and come back to it. We're talking about the idea of trust, and that they've got to
handing it back to them.
Turn it back to them, yeah.
Yeah. Handing it back to them. So, I made the mistake then of answering and reading something. I need to turn the chat box off. So handing it back to them. That trust is something. Kevin McConkie says it's really important, and also that mechanism of them then trusting themselves and being able to develop and develop the state for themselves puts a whole new dynamic on it. Something that I didn't really have time to cover this evening is that there's a lot of interest currently in measuring hypnotizability. And of course, the discussion would be, how do we measure self-hypnotizability? And it's a full webinar for another day, but it's a very hot topic in academic circles currently. The hypnotizability needs to change the way in which it's being measured.
There's a question here from, I'm going to pick one up about, where is it about dyslexia? Has your research included a cohort of dyslexic participants, or whether you want to comment at all on doing hypnosis or self-hypnosis with well,
I mean, I don't know if you meant with regards to things like Stroop, but people that have had dyslexia will have an unfair advantage of doing the Stroop. It would be like, it's like me taking my glasses off. I'm better at, I would make, but because if you're not reading the word correctly, then there's no interference of that word. It hasn't, Andrea. No, our research has not included that. It would be very interesting to see how dyslexic participants would get on. Absolutely. Without a doubt, it would be interesting and to see that. But sadly, no, it hasn't. There's so many things I would love to include and research, and so little time.
But I'm just drawing on your knowledge base, which is extensive and impressive, I have to say. On the reverse of that, rather than suggesting that it's hieroglyphics, is there anything in terms of using suggestion with dyslexics to suggest that actually it's not hieroglyphic, that's easier to read, and then responsiveness?
I mean, sadly, there's no such thing at the moment. At least not that I'm aware of. And I've had to painstakingly review the literature. But that line of inquiry. What a brilliant idea.
Reverse Stroop.
What a brilliant idea. Do a reverse Stroop. Andrea, that's there for you to go and pioneer, I think. Giving somebody suggestions that words begin to formulate effectively. It sounds ridiculously simple, but the word blindness suggestion is ridiculously simple.
Yeah, and and the implications of Stroop, I think, are really interesting in terms of derailing an automatic process, and that so much of what we suffer from is our automatic processes. So the ability of hypnosis to derail automatic elements of automatic processes, very interesting.
Well, I know, I know that you're a real fan of awareness training and making people so aware of themselves that they do decenter, they do decentralize rigid trains of thought and feeling and so on, and there's some very similar notions to be had there for sure.
Oh, gosh, there's too many threads we could go down. I want to come back to one from Natalie Minnis here, which is a lovely one here. She says, I wonder if Adam thinks that most of us hypnotize ourselves often into various types of self-belief, myths, or fears without even realizing it.
Yeah, so I'm a bit begrudging sometimes of this whole idea of natural trances, that people talk about us always being in some kind of hypnosis, because I think that hypnosis is more specific than just a naturally occurring type of accidental type of process. I think that's something slightly different that's going on. However, I think you make a really, really valid point in terms of a lot of the mechanisms that make random beliefs so effective, and become so sticky and so implanted, are very similar mechanisms to those at the heart of what we of what we're teaching as far as self-hypnosis is concerned. So it makes absolute sense to say, without a doubt, there's some self-hypnotic influence in that, such as the example I gave earlier with the recycling of phobic responses. There's a lot of very similar self-hypnotic characteristics and parallels to be drawn there. So I think you make a really good point. All of that said, I like to distance myself from this idea of daily trances, because I think hypnosis, when done correctly, is specifically a different characteristic to something that naturally happens. Although we can harness much of what naturally happens, laser beam in on it, and turn it into hypnosis.
Well, I think that idea of taking, the negative self-hypnosis, automatic negative self-hypnosis concept from Arrows, and then using that as a way to show the client they're already really good at it.
Yeah, exactly. And being able to show people that, how powerful they're already doing the stuff you're asking them to do, is a great resource. Your problem is a massive resource. Yeah,
you're already really good at it. You're an expert at this.
Yeah.
Sue asks here, she says, can you possibly talk us through then your protocol using self-hypnosis for a first-time client who's contacted you with general anxiety disorder? That's quite a big topic, Sue.
So yeah, I probably wouldn't. The self-hypnosis protocol isn't a clinical application. It's a protocol for somebody to develop self-hypnosis. So the protocol itself is a framework, and when we initially teach it, we teach people to practice a range of hypnotic phenomena, but where we teach the hypnotic phenomena within the protocol is where you would insert your anxiety types of processes. So self-hypnosis primarily we'll be using in an adjunctive capacity, so make it as part of your treatment plan, an inherent part of your treatment plan. And so the protocol is really teaching a set of very, very logic steps on the back of, a hypnotic mindset, where you are appropriately motivated, have a good level of expectancy, where you're engaging in a little bit of self-deception to believe that things are going to happen automatically by themselves, where you are adopting the role, and you are assuming responsibility for the effectiveness of hypnosis, and so on. And so, having educated them in that, I talk to them about a skill, that hypnosis is going to be a really cool skill that you're going to be able to take away with you, and and talk them through eye fixation. So this mindset we've just been talking about, pull it all together in your mind while you fix upon the spot on the wall or the ceiling. Balance your head, follow your eyes up, fatigue your eyelids. So imagine them getting heavier, believe it to be true. When they close, absorb yourself within that process. And we give some strategies for doing that. I don't like too much of the use of the word deepener and deep, because I think a lot of people correlate depth with being zonked out, and I don't want them to be zonked out. We want them to be an active agent in the process. So eyes closed, dribbling down themselves, listening to whale music is not ideal for good quality active alert self-hypnosis. So absorbing themselves, becoming more focused, sometimes even using dissociation as a kind of absorption process, like Stoic meditation, view from above type of thing. And then to engage, use all of that you've created to practice hypnotic skills, such as sticking your hand to the table, sticking a pen, or Stanford, or we use Sussex Waterloo scale of hypnotizability, SWASH, and the items that are in there, things like imagining a fly landing on the back of your hand, audio hallucinations, a wide range of different types of hypnotic phenomena that people practice and practice and practice and bring themselves out of hypnosis. I know there was a question. There was a question earlier on.
Before you go there, I just want to say, well, so maybe for Gad, instead of saying your pen hand stuck to the pen or the pen stuck to your hand, you might say, for 10 minutes now, you're stuck in the present moment and having a good time, just relaxing.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Michael Heap mentioned, that you give yourself suggestions for arm catalepsy to disable yourself from smoking a cigarette. But yeah, so you could then whatever your therapeutic interventions or whatever the component parts of your treatment plan for anxiety are, you could hand that over to them to use within the framework of the protocol. So you ramp up the potency of whatever the treatment plan intervention is. And there's some fairly good evidence that suggests hypnosis makes a lot of CBT processes more effective. So doing it doing the CBT processes or the whatever anxiety protocols you're working with within the vehicle of self-hypnosis becomes something that they then take away and start working on at home. I again, it's one of those things, Sue, that it would probably it's a fairly lengthy discussion to give you a satisfactory, exhaustive answer with that. I'm sorry to say. I'd love to be able to spend a couple of hours really getting into that with you, but hopefully I've given you a kind of a good snippet of that.
There's a question there about, and maybe that was one you're going for, Simona. What if the client's experience of self-hypnosis isn't a positive one and they feel they failed in their attempt? Isn't that risky in terms of their self-belief?
Yeah, but you don't. There is no failure. There's no black and white here. It's gradations. It's shades of grey. Everybody, you don't turn up to a guitar lesson and get really pissed off because you haven't, done a Rachmaninoff concerto in your first lesson or perfectly. Excuse my lack of guitarist knowledge there. You wouldn't turn up and expect to be amazing at playing a guitar in your first lesson. And so if we can create the correct expectation with but by practicing the skills, there's if somebody has a go at doing the pen and the pen drops, we don't both sit there and say, you've messed that up. Instead, we'll be much more inclined to inquire, to be curious, and to be interested. Okay, what's going on? What's going on within you right now? And part of our role, like I said earlier on, part of our role as a hypnotherapist really needs to be, a coach, a trainer to train our clients to be good receptive hypnotic subjects, to show them and to understand them, and to pick at the nuts and bolts of what their organizational experience was then. So let's get interested in what you were doing, what were you saying. It's not something that works or doesn't. It's a process, a skill that will raise, and you're quite right to mention that it can dampen their self-belief. But part of our role is to help work out ways of raising that self-belief, and also doing our best to inoculate unrealistic expectations, doing our best to inoculate from this idea of success or failure, because there is only learning. There's only learning about how to get better. You you drop the pen 1,000 times. We'll work out how to get there. Or we'll do something other than the pen. Do something that is going to be effective. I do this. I do this really lovely process. At least I think it's lovely with people. Sometimes instead of some of the idiomotor responses, we do a process of being really mindful within the self-hypnosis deepener, tuning into one's own heart rate, and then and tuning into the pulse, and imagining the pulse jumping from one finger to another. And when we get people with their fingers on their laps, kind of fizzing and popping away, it's a really lovely exercise. And they become, so getting them interested and having some fun and not letting it be black and white, on, off, success, failure, and letting it, and creating healthy levels of realistic expectation, which is something we do with hetero hypnosis as well. Hopefully you are, yeah.
I mean, there's something really interesting in that I've always felt, Adam, and is that in a way one could create a whole psychotherapy just about learning self-hypnosis. In other words, it will tackle some of the issues of black and white thinking, for example, and getting self down and getting down on ourselves and masturbation. All these things actually get revealed in learning self-hypnosis.
Well, you're quite right. By the way, Kevin McConkie, my Kevin McConkie thing was that he says he teaches self-hypnosis, but instead of doing inductions with his clients, he says to them, take yourself into hypnosis, and then he takes over with the hetero hypnosis. So he says that he hypnotherapists ought to teach their clients how to be effective enough at self-hypnosis that we don't have to do the induction, that they can do it and we can take over the mantle of that. I'm sorry to be so random and seem
that's
like...
okay. That's okay.
It troubled me earlier.
That's all right.
I'm getting old.
A thought pops in. The couple of questions from Gareth. Let's see if we can cover these both at once, because they've been sitting here a while. What's the minimum requirements for successful self-hypnosis, separate from the personal aspects that individuals may adopt? I'm assuring there is a framework, otherwise it may not be as effective. And then his second question is, if self-hypnosis can create word blindness, how effective is it in creating synesthesia?
Yeah, I mean, synesthesia. I mean, a wide range of delusions. There's a very prolific and brilliant researcher in Australia, a lady by the name of Amanda Barnier, who among a wide range of different types of delusion, hypnotic phenomena. But one of the beautiful things about hypnosis is that you get to model delusion, because in research it's very hard to get ethics to work with people that have real delusions. So being able to recreate delusions using hypnosis and study what's happening in the brain, it makes hypnosis a very useful exploratory tool. But Amanda Barnier has done a wide range of different studies, creating hypnotic delusions, including making believe that you are the opposite sex. And she does something called mirrored self-misidentification, whereby you look into the mirror, you're hypnotized to believe that you're going to see someone else. You open your eyes and you see someone else. And we do that with self-hypnosis on my self-hypnosis seminars. But we also, so the rationale for doing a number of those different things. I think Mark probably would have told you all about Irving Kirsch. One of the things that Irving Kirsch did, where they told people they were going to hallucinate the color red and purposely pumped red light into the room as a bit of a parlor trick, and then later, and the people that had the artificial light pumped in were better at hallucinating red without the light later on. So the capacity to be able to do something, to do things in line such as synesthesia. Certainly the principles are there. There's a couple of studies that I can't think of off the top of my head which I recall very briefly, but there's not a big body of research on it. But your line of inquiry makes absolute sense. And the first half of that question was something, the minimum requirements.
What's the minimum requirements for successful hypnosis separate from the personal aspects that individuals may adopt? I'm ensuring there is a framework, otherwise it may not be as effective.
Yeah, I mean, there needs to be a certain number of very good, Simon. But yeah, no, I think there needs to be a minimum number of practice sessions that are conducted and conducted in a particular way. Is that what you meant by minimum requirements?
Yeah, I think it was that. I did feel it was a little. If you're going to pop that in there, Gareth, in a moment, that might be good.
I mean, just with regards to that little quip there by Simon, all hypnosis is stage hypnosis. It's funny because some of the parlor trickery may sometimes seem to be lacking in ethics, but anything that can be used to leverage one's own ability to self-deceive and invest belief, is amazingly powerful. Yeah.
I did want to comment, by the way, on the Kirsch. Yeah, we do talk about that in the course, and it is so interesting. But Devin Terhune told me that wasn't replicated in his experimental hypnosis course. So I was a bit.
Oh, really? Which one?
The red light and the green light and the.
Oh, right. Oh, really? Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And they used them in another one. They used some biofeedback monitors apparently, where Irving told me that that they showed them all the a biofeedback monitor, and when they were hypnotized, asked them to open their eyes and said to them, look, this shows that you're doing really well. You're really deeply hypnotized. You can close your eyes again now. And the monitors read the same for everyone. They were which but those people went on to be much more responsive and better hypnotic subjects.
Doesn't your online hypnosis shop have a line in those monitors that you sell?
Yeah, well, not yet.
I'm going to drop a question in here because time is ticking by, and it's been one of the ones I really wanted to talk about a little bit about. You mentioned Lynn and others published that paper. They made these now sort of 17 points about what hypnosis isn't or whatever. And this the one point there, which kind of like, I kept meaning to ask him about, was saying, this idea that hypnosis focused attention, and there seemed to be just one study that sort of went against that. And I wasn't sure about that. And I want to just point into that idea of focused attention, because again, what's implied in so many of these things, that this focused attention is just happening like this, as if it's a state that's rigid, and this idea that rather it's a proportional allocation of attention more to primary processes, we might call it, rather than higher order thoughts, etc. So that this idea of the relative proportion of attention to different aspects of experience is shifting, and that's really what hypnosis is about, is just shifting things towards that direction. You're not checking on your own agency quite as much, so you experience it as a bit more involuntary, but you could, and the attention is flicking back and forth. We talked about saccadic eye movements, the point being that those attentional shifts could be 10th of a second or 5th of a second, and aren't necessarily, you're not necessarily aware of making them, but they construct our experience. So instead of a system becoming a subsystem becoming disassociated, it's actually that that we're not just flicking the attention back there quite as much as we would normally. Does that
absolutely it does. And one of the things I think that self-hypnosis does is it gives a really safe environment for that to happen, for that to occur, for people actually for their attention, their sense of agency to flit, and to be organized and to be disorganized,
Because you mentioned about, even for a brief moment having this experience, and the point is to collect more of the brief moments and string them together.
Absolutely.
Instead of discarding the brief moment.
Exactly. If you edit your internal reality, and if you can recognize, in that moment, that was, I had something there, and recognize that and filter your reality in a favorable way, rather than, not recognizing it. I tell people, even if it's just for a brief moment and you recognize that occurring, then what a success we've had. And it'd be very difficult to follow the process, adopt a hypnotic mindset, and not have a brief moment. It would be very difficult. They'd have to be doing something really, really wrong, not listening to you, or you weren't connecting it properly.
Because I was mentioning the connection with it, rather than feedback and constantly monitoring what's happening, it's more like setting your cruise control, and you just notice when you get to 50 miles an hour and you disregard the other information. Feed forward system.
I'm a little bit behind you on knowledge with that particular approach. But it makes absolute sense. It makes absolute sense, and I think some of the dots I'll go and spend some time joining up as a result of the prolific WhatsApp selling of this notion that you gave me this week.
Let's come to some of the other questions here. I think we had a little bit earlier.
Hi, Colin, by the way. Hi, Colin.
Remembering the fun of pins through the skin. Oh, he's doing your self-hypnosis workshop there, where you
right, yes. Yeah.
Permission from the local authority for people to pierce themselves. Is that right? Good. If there's any questions we missed in here, there was some ones that I put in there, but that's okay. I've been talking a lot. One of the ideas I'll drop in here, Adam, is that also, we're doing very interesting work with Don Meekenbaum. I mean, he's decided to record his legacy course with us, which is very exciting.
Wow. Yeah. Cool.
It's very cool, and we just get on very well. But his idea that we are homo narrans, that we are storytellers,
right, yes.
And the way we experience ourselves in the world is to a high degree a result of the stories we tell ourselves and tell others. And then the use of hypnosis and then self-hypnosis to start to change that narrative. I think that's I just find that it's the kind of the hypnotic script.
Absolutely.
The new story.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of merit in the idea of, narratives as a form of self-hypnotic communication, especially because, again, if we were to draw some parallels in terms of, the belief that's invested in them, the fact that they engage our imagination, the fact that, we expect and we have, a lot of flavor and characteristic attached to it. Again, that it's a very powerful force, and they're very playable. Hypnosis is repetition is hypnotic. Repetition is hypnotic, and so replaying a narrative, it can be very pervasive. Yeah.
I know we could talk a lot about this. Now, everyone thought we were going to come away this evening with our hands stuck to our heads. We're not going to be taking that experience tonight. But when you came to the Great Ormond Street Hospital, we did all have our fingers stuck to our pens, and it was a very interesting coaching experience you took us through.
I know that I know that some people question the application of hypnotic phenomena, you've been to see a hypnotherapist, your husband or wife or partner has asked you, how'd it go at the hypnotherapist today? He taught me how to stick a pen to my hand, and how's that helping you with your depression? So I realized that on the surface it may seem you know, like not necessarily like a massively valuable life skill. However, you know, if you can genuinely convince yourself and dictate your own reality to the point where you know a pen is stuck to your hand, or you know your hand is stuck to the table, or your arm is floating, you know it to be your reality, and that you have created that reality using your thoughts, and you know, then this is liberation. You know, this is a beautiful thing. And I think that then being applied across the treatment plan, you know, just raises and makes the treatment plan, you know, exponentially better, more profound, and more powerful.
I mean, I all I hear is Bandura here.
Yeah,
isn't it, right?
Yeah. I mean, you know, Irving has big issues with Bandura.
Well, Don Meekenbaum does as well. I can tell you. He says, Bobo, but he called it Bobo therapy. He says, well, so do you think you can do it? Yeah, I think I probably can do it. So you can do it? Yeah, I think I can do it. How do you feel now? Better.
Yeah. Yeah, great.
Bandura is very good at dressing things up in very complicated language, but he's very solid as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that idea, and yeah, fantastic. Adam, that was brilliant. Really interesting, and I'm very I think very encouraging for myself, and I hope the others here, to see that actually what we've been teaching is relatively lined up with you know, the point of view that you are pursuing there in terms of the socio-cognitive approach. So yeah, and hopefully we'll all take more inspiration here. And I have to say, I have taken from what you did with Great Ormond Street Hospital, and this idea, and the paper you and Ben published as well, this idea that the difference between, you know, listening to a recording versus self-generated and self-directed, and also that it's more effective if we start with self-hypnosis. We've been weaving that into the course. So whether people pick that up or not, I have. Great. I think it's so, yeah. So I want to thank you for your contributions to the field, and then to what we brought into the trainings. It's fantastic.
Oh, you know, thank you for being so enthusiastic about it. And you know, I'm sure everybody knows what brilliant hands all your students and graduates are in with you. You know, and you know, I think someone said there, you know, it's nice that we're working together. I'll be honest, there's very few hypnotherapy colleges that I'm happy to work with, because you know, there's so much nonsense out there. You know, I think you guys are really good advocates for this field, and you know, you do a marvelous job. You in particular, Mark, but your team as well. You know.
Well, I have a great team. You met Sue there, and they're amazing. I don't know how we found them, but they're fantastic, and a great team of tutors. You saw Andrea as well. She's one of the tutors on the team here that works with people doing it. So, well, thank you. Yeah, your work's an inspiration, and we're drawing on it in what we're teaching people, and so we're all going to be following you closely, Adam. And I hope.
Great.
I hope we shouldn't hope that you get the results you want in your research, because that's not science.
No, exactly. No.
We hope your hypothesis failed terribly.
Yeah. You know, whatever happens, whatever way it goes, we learn something.
Very good. Very good. Well, we shall, I think, perhaps continue this conversation. Maybe we'll have another time when we do something like this and riff around various different points. People will come and bring their questions, because it's fantastic having your knowledge here, Adam.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for inviting me. It's been really lovely being here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I always think it's a real privilege and honor that anybody should invest their time and energy coming and listening to me. So thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody, for turning up and your great questions and attention. And yeah, it's great. And I know a lot of people are going to catch this on replay, Adam. They couldn't be here. So we are going to have it on 30-day replay if they've registered beforehand for it, if that's okay with you.
Of course.
Fantastic.